This podcast is brought to you by Spotify for podcasters. Have you yourself ever wanted to become a podcaster? Well, Spotify makes it simple and easy to do so. You can record, edit, and even distribute your podcast straight from their app. The best part? It is absolutely 100% free. Visit their website, podcasters.spotify.com, for more details, and download the app on your Apple or Android devices today to get started on your podcasting adventure. That's Spotify for podcasters. What is up, everybody? Travis Fowler Harkrider is back once again with another edition of the Four Corner Podcast. So you know what that means. It's time and talk wrestling. So this week, wrestling has been pretty fun. Once again, I've actually been very impressed with a lot of the shows that have been put out as of recent, because it feels like it's been entertaining. And I don't mean that in a sarcastic way or anything of that sort. It's actually just been fun to sit down and watch wrestling. Particularly AEW has actually been pulling out some stuff over the last couple weeks that is extremely entertaining. This past week they had the finals of their tag eliminator tournament, which saw the Better Than You Baby team of MJF and Adam Cole win. So now they get a tag title shot against FTR. That whole tournament had ended up being a lot of fun. And their little dance off at the beginning was something I did not expect, but it was very fun to see. And then the main event, you saw Blood and Guts, which was another spectacle in and of itself. I mean, we've seen things like tax before when it comes to like them putting it on the shoe of Nick Jackson. We've seen tax used in general before, but then they broke out the glass, which was even I had to cringe a little bit, and I don't mean in a, oh, I wish they wouldn't do that, how disgusting kind of thing. Is it something I personally would do? Probably not. But for entertainment's sake, yeah, it was pretty brutal to watch. The bed of nails to go on top of it was also very like, holy crap, what are they not going to do at this point in the match? So all fun and entertaining things. On SmackDown, the Bloodline angle is still continuing on, and this time we had the tribal court that I guess was courting these two to put together to then discuss, as they called it, the terms of combat, which ended up leading to them naming their match at SummerSlam Tribal Combat, which is just their fancy way of saying, hey, we're going to compete in a street fight or hardcore, anything goes rules, whatever you want to call it. That's what we're going to do. So I actually agree with a sentiment that I saw where of all of the segments that we've seen this year, this one actually felt a little flat out of every one of them. And while that's not necessarily a terrible thing, because I mean, if you've been hitting on all cylinders and you have one bad thing, that's not a terrible thing for the whole angle in general. It's just a little disappointing. I think it could have had a lot more to it than what we got. But still looking forward to the Jey Uso Roman Reigns match in a couple weeks' time. On Raw, Judgment Day is still going strong, and I know that there was some people that had some questions over what happened this past week, at least on the NXT side of things. But one way or another, I knew Dominic Mysterio was going to get a title. It was either going to be the tag titles on Monday, or it was going to be the North American title. You know, you had two title matches, and there was no way, with the word going around that they do see the Judgment Day faction as the successor to the Bloodline faction, which is 100% accurate. And I'm so glad that the reports are saying that they're going to keep this group together and not implode it like it was looking like they were going to do. So I'm very happy that we've got plenty more Judgment Day to go. I gotta say that Dominic being the NXT North American Champion is fun. I'm glad that they did put a title on him. I think he has earned it, at least with the crowd reactions that he gets out of it. It does call into question of what they're trying to utilize with NXT, because Solo won that NXT North American title on a call-out match and then had to forfeit it like a week later. So I don't know how this is different. The only thing I can think of is that since Carmelo Hayes at the time was the North American champion and he was the one that issued the open challenge. You could make the argument that Solo answering and winning, it was kind of a non-sanctioned match that was still honored for the week time, but since it again was not a sanctioned NXT match, then you could say it stripped him of the title that way. Whereas this, even though Dominic is from the Raw brand, it was already scheduled and sanctioned by NXT management. Again, I'm just snowballing storyline ideas here of how it could make sense, but I understand some people's sentiment of why they would have chosen to put the NXT North American title on him. I would have preferred tag titles for him and Priest, but I get it. You know, you're trying to still keep Zayn and Owens strong, which is good. I enjoy them as a tag team, so I'm not that disappointed. I just kind of would have done a different route, but that's just my opinion. Over on Impact, it's so fun still. The fallout from Slammiversary has been fun thus far, even after just one episode. You've got Josh Alexander who's come back. Leo Rush has put himself in the mix. Bully Ray is still staying in the mix. Alex Shelley and the Machine Guns and Hole are still having fun. Kushida is being added in there, and while I've never been the biggest Kushida fan, he is talented and he does wonders for that roster. So all good things are happening over on the Impact roster, and soon they'll start getting their guys back that have been injured, like a Steve Macklin, or even a Bully Ray, or not Bully Ray, but they already got Josh Alexander back. When Macklin comes back, that's going to open up more storyline opportunities. So all good things over on Impact's side. Still, if you haven't checked them out, you need to, because they are a fun product and they've been firing on all cylinders all year. Now, as we shift gears real quick, I wanted to discuss something that had made the rounds last week during the Owen Hart Foundation Tournament Finals over in, I believe it was Edmonton. I think that's where it was held. And they showed a still shot of Punk going over and embracing David Benoit. David Benoit being the son of the late Chris Benoit. And there's always been a lot of controversy surrounding David, and there really shouldn't be. From all accounts and every interview that he's done, he seems to still love pro wrestling, even when honestly he would have every reason in the world not to. He never has bashed the business, nor has he said anything to the degree of blaming wrestling for the events that took place with his dad and his stepmom and his half brother. But he still just wants a chance and wants an opportunity. And I think he deserves it. You know, just because his last name is that of someone who did some atrocious things doesn't mean that he should suffer any kind of repercussion in his own right when he wasn't the one that did it. So just wanted to take that second to say that I think David Benoit does deserve an opportunity, and hopefully if he has been training and this is something he does want to pursue, that he gets that opportunity when he is ready for it. And now, as a podcast, we talk about a lot of wrestling stuff, and for the most part, we keep it about new era content, most recent stuff, but I'm also very a nostalgic kid. If you're a millennial, that's kind of what we're known for, is nostalgia. So I was doing some thinking and did some discussing, and if you've watched our most recent interview with Tony Snow, if you haven't, go check it out now. He and I briefly discussed how we feel the Shawn Michaels 1996 title run is a very underrated title run. And I still believe that it is. When you look at the body of work as a whole, there's a lot in there that was really fun and a lot of good storytelling within that title run. Him winning the title in the Iron Man match, the first one ever from Bret Hart, then going on to do a no-holds-barred match with Diesel, and then he would go on through the summer to face British Bulldog, Vader, Mankind, that also would show a different side of Michaels and a somewhat anything-goes type of affair at Mind Games in '96. All of that then culminated with him going one-on-one with Sid at Survivor Series, which helped build a story to go into the Rumble '97 in San Antonio, his hometown. And I really just don't think people appreciate that title run like they should. There was a lot of good wrestling from his part there, and a lot of good stories were played out with him as champion. I think even JR noted on the documentary for Shawn Michaels by WWE, which is called Heartbreak and Triumph, and is available on the network if you're out of the States, Peacock if you're in States. I believe he even said that he doesn't know how the company would have fared had they not had Michaels as champion. Being that they were still somewhat in a downhill slope or blunder or whatever you want to refer to it as, it's very much a what if situation. And for the WWE side and those who were working there at the time, it's very much, thank God, a what if scenario at this point. But they didn't know if things were going to work out for them as a company. And I think JR said something to the extent of, I would be afraid of where the business would have been had he not been champion. So it's great for the company overall that Michaels was able to carry that load. Was it exactly how they thought it would be? Probably not. But it still is a run that doesn't get talked about enough and should be admired more than what I believe it is, as well as Tony Snow's same thought on that as well. It's hard to believe that 22 years ago, we saw 22 years ago, almost to the date, I think it's just one day prior, or one day after, I should say, WWE held the one and only Invasion pay-per-view, because this was during the WCW, ECW invasion that took place. And there's been some chatter about it just this past week with Eric Bischoff on his podcast, where it was kind of toyed around with how he would have booked the invasion. And there was a lot of fun stuff that they talked about on that podcast. If you haven't, go ahead and check it out. It is a fun listen. But I can remember overall, I was so excited when WCW was invading WWE. For those that are unaware or have never listened to this podcast before, without going into the full story, I didn't get to watch WWE for a 2-year period. It was from 1999 to 2001 when I was able to watch them again. My mother had grounded me from WWE wrestling, period, and she almost did it for wrestling as a whole, but I begged and pleaded to still watch WCW. So for 2 straight years, I did nothing but watch WCW, and that became my brand. That became what I enjoyed. And looking back at the dying days of WCW, I can't believe I still was a fan, but somehow I did still remain there. I was still excited when the WCW invasion happened, because something that I don't think people really talk about enough is how they do say that the C and B level stars of WCW were the only ones that were brought over when they acquired WWE. And part of that, I would agree, is true. When you look at the roster that they got, there was only really 2 big stars of that whole roster, that being Booker T and Diamond Dallas Page, that came over. But you didn't have Sting, you didn't have the NWO, you didn't have Goldberg, you didn't have Steiner. There was a whole slew of names that didn't follow. And it really has been known now as one of the most botched angles, and it was because of the WCW side of things. And I really feel like people will go a little too hard on that, because if you were watching WCW at the time, even though they weren't like major level stars, there were still stars that were within that team. Kanyon was building himself up as a good heel worker and a top star for WCW. Unfortunately, we know at least a little bit of what's been told on the Buff Bagwell side of things, but Bagwell had his opportunity and that didn't go very well. Why they didn't just wait to do that match in Atlanta, Georgia the next week has been a mystery to many. Instead, they did it in Tacoma, Washington. But I think Bagwell's luck could have changed if certain things would have been a bit different. On the cruiserweight side of things, obviously Shane Helms was the cruiserweight champion going into it, and you still had Billy Kidman, who were 2 cruiserweight mainstays. Rey Mysterio not being there at the time did, I think, kind of hurt them a little bit there. But there were guys there that could help carry the load and be looked at as stars had they been given a certain opportunity to showcase that. I was thinking myself, if I had to pick the invasion or book it myself, that would be kind of fun, actually. Might be a video idea in the future. But I think I would have tried to do things a little bit different. I agree a little bit with some of the sentiment that Bischoff said about just going away for a little while, like don't even mention the WCW brand for a little bit. But for my money, if I had been booking the Invasion, I would have tried to book it for at least a solid 2 years, kind of what we've seen with the Bloodline to a degree. Um, but I would go from WrestleMania 17, if you will. You can have a hush period of time if you want to, but from that time period, I'd go all the way to WrestleMania 19, and just have the final battles, if you will, take place on that card. For me personally, I could still see them intertwining ECW in there, and I think that would actually be kind of fun. Also, because I think NWO coming in later on would have been good too, because something that I didn't really even think about until after I listened to that podcast was that there were a lot of guys that they would bring in just the very next year that could have helped the WCW side with star power. You had the roster that they brought over, but if you would have waited just a little bit longer, Ric Flair came the night after Survivor Series, the final match between the Alliance and WWE. Could have been a great mouthpiece for WCW. The NWO then came in February, which would have been only 2 months later. So you would have had the NWO. Scott Steiner came in 2002. Rey Mysterio came in 2002. Goldberg came in 03 after WrestleMania 19. But if you would have had some of these big name players as part of your WCW squad, I think you could have convinced Goldberg, and they also said, and I agree, you probably could have convinced Sting to come over and do the money as well. If you would have had just a little bit of investment and forethought into doing the whole Invasion over a stretch period of time instead of just shooting it out the door as quickly as you could. And for my money, I would still incorporate ECW, and I think I would include something they suggested on the podcast is intertwining NWO to not be for anybody and still be a faction in of their self, kind of like what they did originally over in WCW. So you would have had basically four brands that you could root for with WCW, ECW, the NWO, and WWE. Could have been a fun thing to do, and you would have had a lot of players to work with on that. So I think it's a little disappointing, and there's a lot of missed opportunities, but if you could go back with hindsight and rebook it, if I'm going all the way to 19, WrestleMania 19 that is, with how I would do it, I would pick 3 top matches to close out the rivalry between the whole Invasion. And it would be the dream matches that I think could work and sell all 3 if you could do it. Austin Goldberg, Sting and Taker, Rock and DDP. I think it would be fun to have seen those 3, and it would have been a great way to end the Invasion storyline. Again, I might think of doing a video where I rebook the Invasion myself. We'll see if that comes to fruition at another time, but what did you think of the Invasion at that time? Were you a fan of it? You can obviously let me know down in the comments, and we can have a discussion all day about it. Now, 3 stars that we want to talk about real quick. One, to start off, has the looks of somebody that I think WWE may have cooled off on, which is disappointing because I still think there's hope for him, but I will say that with this current storyline he's had with AJ Styles, it hasn't really panned out the way I was even hoping for, at least at the moment. Karrion Kross is somebody I was so excited to see come back in the doors of WWE, and I just don't think it's lived up to what we were hoping for. And that's disappointing to say, and there's always time that you can rebuild it, but I think that they may have missed the boat a little bit with Kross. I think he's lost too many matches and notably too many feuds to really establish him as a threat in the main event scene. Whereas before, when he came in and attacked Drew McIntyre on his first night back in the company after being released and then brought back, I think they really should have capitalized on Kross at that time and tried to strap somewhat of a rocket to him and give him the win over McIntyre in the feud, because I think inevitably it was McIntyre who went over. So I think they made a couple errors that were detrimental to Kross at the moment, but I do think there's time that they can restore him. But it's going to take some time, and it's going to take effort from all parties to really make that happen. And I know Karrion Kross is definitely willing to make it happen. On another side note, for a star that's been gone due to illness that we still are unaware of exactly what that means, Bray Wyatt has been rumored to be coming back either at or after SummerSlam, and some of the rumors have it noted that he's going to start a program with Cody Rhodes. There has been talks, and there's been little things said online from at least Bray's side that shows there could be a story involved between him and Cody. Do I think that would be a smart idea? Well, from a business standpoint, you have two popular stars going against each other, but then from a fan standpoint and a who can walk out of this thing as a victor standpoint, if you're going to go into a full-blown feud, yeah, both guys are popular. So I think you would do yourself a disservice if you put Wyatt against Rhodes, because Rhodes is white hot right now. When Bray Wyatt comes back, he's going to be white hot because people always enjoy seeing him. So I think you run the risk of neutering at least one, if not both parties. So I don't think going against Rhodes would be the smartest thing. Time will only tell if this is even something that comes to fruition, because we've heard so many different things about Wyatt's situation, and he's been gone for quite a while now. So hopefully he can come back soon, because I know myself and several others miss seeing him on TV. But again, going against Rhodes as a comeback, I don't think that would be beneficial for either one of them. But one thing that you can't stop is the momentum of another star that's being built, LA Knight. Don't know why he's not going to be in the U.S. title picture for SummerSlam. Obviously, there had been rumors that they wanted to put a Latin American representative as champion here soon. So that has now made for the finals of Rey Mysterio versus Santos Escobar. But I really do think they're going to potentially miss an opportunity for LA Knight. And I say that, but I also am still optimistic, because some people just want instant gratification these days. That's kind of how society is, and they don't wait for the build. So just let me leave something into perspective for you. John Cena did his Doctor of Thugonomics gimmick as a heel character near the end of 2002, okay? It wasn't until almost a full year later that he started getting babyface reactions, and then The Office turned him into a babyface. And then it wasn't until WrestleMania 20 in March of 2004 that he got his first singles title. So that was a build that took well over a year, and I would venture to say in total a year and a half, to really get a title and a super run out of John Cena. So if the hottest person in the entire business, that being John Cena at one point, had a year and a half to get momentum behind him and get a good build on himself, do the same for LA Knight. He just hit the main roster as the LA Knight character just late last year. So give him a little bit of time. I still think that it's just a matter of time before LA Knight does something big for WWE as the face that he is getting over as. Could a Royal Rumble win be in his foresight? Possibly. I could see a scenario of LA Knight winning the Royal Rumble and then going on to face Seth Rollins, specifically for the world title, or whoever the world champion is, maybe even Finn Balor after SummerSlam, which I wouldn't be mad about that either. I could totally see that happening there, and then having Cody Rhodes take on Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40 for the WWE Undisputed Universal title. And there, I've said it numerous times, the two guys who have been getting some of the best reactions, being the faces of your company as the respective champions, LA Knight as World Heavyweight Champion and Cody Rhodes as WWE Champion. I think it means nothing but money being printed for WWE. But guys, that's all the thoughts I got for you this week. Tell me what some of your thoughts are. What do you think of LA Knight's recent WWE run? Do you think they're pushing him? Do you think they're stalling on it? Do you think he can make it? I believe he can, and I think most other people can too. Do you like the idea of LA Knight and Cody Rhodes in their own main eventing WrestleMania for titles? Do you think they're the faces of the company? All these questions I keep popping out at you. And of course, I asked you about the invasion as well. Let me know and sound off in those comments and tell me what you think about WWE and wrestling as a whole as of late. If you haven't, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting that subscribe button. Tap the notification bell so you know anytime we upload a video to the channel. And make sure you follow us on all social medias that we are on: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I will be back, of course, next week to do another edition of the 4CP. But until that time, hope you have a great week ahead and continue to love pro wrestling.